tribe that would shoot arrows at you if you even tried to set foot on their land, to a tribe of 9 people who happily accepted modern living, here are 10 tribes that never evolved. But before we begin, I've noticed that most of you watching this aren't subscribed yet. If you do like our videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's absolutely free, and you can always change your mind later. Number 10. The Sentinelese. The Sentinelese are a tribe of about 250 people who live on North Sentinel Island between India and Thailand. We say 250, but that's more of a rough estimate rather than an exact headcount, because every time someone goes to their island to conduct a proper census, they greet him with a hail of arrows. There were a few peaceful encounters in the late 1960s, however, and that's where most of what we know about their culture came from. Coconuts delivered to the beaches as a gift were eaten rather than planted. Live pigs were shot with arrows and then buried without being eaten. The most well-received items were red buckets, which were probably taken away by the Sentinelese, but weirdly, similar green buckets were left behind. Anyone trying to land on the islands today must have a death wish. A National Geographic team was forced to turn back after the lead team member got an arrow through his thigh, and 2 local guides were killed. The Sentinelese also have a reputation for being able to survive natural disasters, unlike many of the modern people who live in similar environments. For instance, these coast-dwelling people successfully escaped the effects of the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, which wreaked havoc in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. Number 9. The Rook. Vietnam is home to several isolated tribes, but by far the most unusual are the Rook people, who were only first encountered by Vietnamese soldiers during the Vietnam War. The soldiers first saw these forest people. Their homes were either destroyed or damaged due to a bombing run by US warplanes. Their native tropical forest had also been almost completely burned. With all that's been happening, representatives of the tribe decided to establish contacts with other residents of the country. Most of them moved to nearby towns, but were unable to adapt to their new way of living. Mostly, they were being forced by local authorities to adhere to a more modern way of life, and by the tribe's sheer refusal to do so. Today, the tribe continues to live the way of life as they used to years ago. They are primarily fisher folk and gatherers, but they also cultivate rice fields and raise fruit gardens like they've done so for centuries. Some of them even still inhabit cave systems in the jungle, while others build huts. Number 8. The Satan Nomads. The Satan Nomads of Mongolia are a people that live like no one else. They inhabit the Darkhad Valley and are experienced reindeer herders. Taking care of reindeer isn't only a job to them, but a way of life. In fact, most of the community's activities are centered around caring for and feeding their herds. The deer, on the other hand, provide them with milk, which is used to make cheese and sour cream. They live in traditional tents called yurts, a necessity because they have a penchant for moving around, looking for better pastures for their deer. But they do still stay a bit and allow contact with tourists. This gives them the opportunity to earn extra money from the sale of handicrafts. And for a fee, tourists can even go on reindeer rides. They are extremely friendly to tourists and are even quite happy to induct perfect strangers into their culture, but are extremely hesitant about adapting to the culture of others. Number 7. The Kalam. Papua New Guinea is home to many indigenous tribes, but among them, the Kalam is one surely worth mentioning. They live in a village high in the mountains of Simbai, where they can only be reached by helicopter. There is a road, but it is very steep and slick and covered with bushes, so this is one of those rare cases when a helicopter is safer than a car. And because they are so inaccessible, the Kalam tribe has maintained its original culture, which is quite fortunate because their traditions and habits are quite fascinating. They wear headdresses decorated with bird feathers as a ritual dress, as well as massive necklaces made of pearl shells, birds' beaks, and wildflowers. Young boys get their nose pierced as adults, while women cover their bodies in pig fat to give them more shine. The men of this tribe are skilled hunters, and the women are engaged in farming and gathering. They are also known for the string and friendly relationships between all members of the tribe. In fact, they can be described as one overly big extended family, which actually is appropriate since their name actually means family. Number 6. The Goroka. Like the Kalam, the Goroka hail from Papua New Guinea and are known all over the world for their age-old traditions. The men of the tribe wear beautiful headdresses covered in parrot and birds of paradise feathers. They also wear various adornments made of seashells, which are deemed the most valuable. Wearing these shells is a sign of prosperity and wealth. Very often, a shell necklace is presented to a local girl by her future husband before the wedding. The tradition dates back hundreds of years ago when tiny pieces of pearl started becoming their main form of currency. The Goroka people live in isolation from the outside world through no fault of their own. Tribal wars with other tribes and harsh natural conditions made them choose to live their solitary lives. That said, their way of life differs little from the way of life of ordinary people. There are strong families in the tribe, all of whose members have their own responsibilities, with the most senior being considered the head of the family. Number 5. The Maasai. The Maasai people of East Africa live in the savanna between southern Kenya and northern Tanzania. Unlike most of the tribes on our list, they have quite the population, numbering over 900,000 people. These people live a very special way of life, one which has absolutely not changed over the past century. Their tribal structure is based on the so-called age groups, and the responsibilities of tribe members depend on the age of the group they belong to. Becoming a warrior is top priority for all Maasai boys, so much so that they prepare for the eventuality for most of their young lives. A warrior's role is to protect their animals from human and animal predators and to provide security to their families. So boys are tasked to herd cattle, and later, through rituals and ceremonies, Maasai boys are guided on how to become a warrior. Women, on the other hand, are responsible for making the houses as well as supplying water, collecting firewood, milking cattle, and cooking for the family. The tribe is also a polygamous society, one of the very few who are. Number 4. The Karo. The Karo tribe is the smallest tribe in South Ethiopia, and they live along the banks of the Omo River. Once having a healthy population, living conditions have led to a serious reduction in their numbers, which is now at around 1,000 individuals. The Karo are distinguished by their manner of decorating their faces and bodies using white chalk and red ochre. The men paint themselves brighter than the women to look more attractive and courageous. They primarily raise livestock, but men can also spend much time hunting. Women, for their part, handle the various domestic chores. Some of the tribal men work in nearby towns, so they aren't completely cut off from modern civilization, but they tend to stick to their old traditions. The Karo are absolutely friendly to European guests. They even accept clothes, jewelry, and other attributes of modern life as a gift. The desire to adorn themselves with bright accessories is one of the most striking features of the tribal culture. Even the youngest members of the tribe wear all sorts of trinkets, beads, and garlands made of insect wings. Number 3. The Huli Wigmen. Again, there are a lot of tribes in Papua New Guinea, but the Huli Wigmen are easily the most original and the most interesting among them, not to mention the most attractive. They are one of the largest cultural groups in the region, numbering approximately 150,000, and while they actively make contact with the modern world, even allowing tourists to take part in their festivals and celebrations, they know where their roots lie and zealously stick to them. They are known as wigmen because they make colorful wigs using their own hair. Unmarried Huli men grow and style their hair in a special way, and when they have finally made 2 or 3 wigs by themselves using nothing but their own hair, they gain the right to choose a wife. They will later wear those wigs only on special occasions. Their gregarious and colorful wigs and outfits make them look like terrifying warriors, but they are in fact a very nice and pleasant people. In fact, they rarely use conflict to solve disputes, even with other tribes. Number 2. The Ramapo Mountain Indians. Among the Indian peoples living on the territory of North America, the Ramapo tribe is definitely the most mysterious. They were successful at concealing themselves from the entire world for a few centuries. Until the end of the 18th century, no one knew they even existed. During the 1700s, European settlers wrapped up their colonization of North America's east coast. By this point, every tribe between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mississippi River had been added to the catalog of known peoples. Every tribe except for one, that is. In the 1790s, a previously unheard of tribe of Native Americans walked out of the woods just 35 miles from New York City. Somehow, they had managed to avoid all contact with the settlers, despite some of the largest battles of both the 7 Years' War and the Revolutionary War being waged in their backyard. They became known as the Jackson Whites, as they had light skin color and were thought to have been descended from Jacks, which is slang for British. They were later given the more dignified name, the Ramapo. Number 1. The Pintupi Nine. This tribe, discovered in a very remote part of Western Australia in 1984, is composed of only 9 people. Unlike many of the tribes that appeared on this list, the Pintupi people were only too eager to join modern society and did not hesitate to turn their backs on their centuries-old traditions. Not really a surprising decision, after all. There were only 9 of them. The Batupi people were invited to come into town where they can receive lots of food and water, and, in return, they can produce handicrafts. They have proved to be incredibly talented people. Many of them create wonderful paintings and make traditional adornments and other items nowadays. However, one of them outrightly refused the comforts of modern living and chose to continue living his old life alone. His name was Yari Yari, and he stayed alone in the Gibson Desert and has been living there in isolation for more than 30 years. Would you choose to shun all forms of modern civilization? Let us know down below in the comments. Also, make sure to hit subscribe